Okay, so we're diving into something kind of cool today, like wild sight, that whole thing.
hmm
Have you ever wanted to just, I don't know, capture everything you see in your art, but you just hit a wall?
Yeah, that feeling of being stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Intimidated even. So we're going to take a deep dive into these excerpts you shared from this Miriam Louisa Simons workbook, Empty Canvas, Empty Mind, and try to unlock how to see like an artist.
And you know what's wild about Simons? She mixes these really practical exercises with almost Zen-like ideas about how we observe the world.
Yeah.
Like it's not just about learning the techniques, it's about shifting your whole perspective.
Yeah, and she really starts right from the get-go. She throws down this idea of survival looking versus really seeing.
Right.
And she's quoting this Frederick Frank who says, we're basically wired just to notice what we need to survive,
All right.
not to really immerse ourselves in observation. I don't know, does that resonate with you? Because I know, I feel like I'm super guilty of that.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. How often are you really rushing through your day and you're just registering the bare minimum? Stop sign, crosswalk, coffee shop.
Totally.
And Simons wants us to break free from that, especially when it comes to art.
Okay, so then how do we switch gears from that practical everyday looking to that deeper seeing that real artists are tapping into?
Well, Simons, she tells this amazing story about a lesson she learned from Franck.
Okay.
He believed that the body, not just our minds, but our bodies, inherently understand drawing.
Really?
Like there's this invisible thread connecting our eyes to our hands.
Wow. See, that's kind of mind-blowing to me. It really challenges the idea that art is purely intellectual.
Exactly.
Right. It's you're not just thinking your way to a good drawing, you're feeling it somehow.
Yes, exactly. Simons is pushing us to tap into this almost like a bodily intelligence.
hmm
She talks about things like breathing exercises, walking meditation, even yoga as ways to unlock this connection. It's about getting out of our heads and into our senses.
Right. See, this is where this is what I think is so interesting.
Right.
This is not your typical art school advice. So how do these practices, how does yoga or mindful walking, how does that actually help you to see differently?
Well, Simons is a big believer in the power of relaxation for artists.
Okay.
She says tension is a creativity killer. It blocks that free flow between, observation and expression.
Oh, interesting.
So these techniques, whether it's focused breathing or the mindful movement of yoga, they quiet the mental chatter and allow for a different kind of attention.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're all tensed up, you're probably not really seeing clearly anyway, right?
Right.
It's your mind, your senses, everything's just too distracted.
Precisely. And being present in your body, in the moment, that's when you really start to notice the details, the nuances, the things you'd normally miss.
It's interesting because she takes that idea of presence even further.
Yeah.
With this exercise she calls the, what is it, the body circuit, right?
Yes.
Where you're tensing and relaxing different parts of your body and focusing your attention as you do it.
Yes.
It sounds a little, I don't know.
It might sound a little out there, but think about it. If you can become acutely aware of all the sensations in your own body,
Yeah.
imagine how much more attuned you'll be to the subtleties of a subject that you're trying to draw.
Oh, wow.
It's about sharpening your overall awareness.
Okay, I can see how that translates to just being a better observer in general,
Right.
not just of your own body, but just of the world around you.
Exactly.
And isn't that one of the biggest hurdles in art? Really seeing things as they are, not just how we assume they are.
You're spot on. And Simons does not shy away from challenging those assumptions. She talks about truly seeing something as if for the first time.
Which is harder than it sounds.
It is.
Can you really unsee something that you've seen a million times before?
Right. It's a real challenge, and that's why Simons, she brings in these exercises from this artist, Corita Kent.
Oh, okay.
And Kent, she would do things study how shadows changed on a single object over a whole week.
Yeah.
Or spend days just, observing the top of a soda bottle.
Okay, I can see how that would force you to really pay attention.
Right.
Because it's so easy to just glance at something and be yeah, I know what that looks like. But to really observe it,
Right.
that takes time, focus.
Exactly. And that kind of focused attention, even on something as I don't know, mundane as a soda bottle,
Yeah.
can lead to these surprising discoveries.
Yeah.
You start to notice the play of light, the subtle curves, the way reflections distort the shape, all these details you totally miss otherwise.
It's kind of like those moments when you're sketching something and then suddenly something clicks.
Yeah.
And you're not just copying what you see. You're really seeing it for the first time.
Right.
It's almost like you're unlocking some new level of perception.
That's a great way to put it. And Simons takes this idea of like deep observation even further when she gets into what she calls edges and emptiness.
Okay.
She's really into this Kim on Nicolaides technique, this like not looking contour drawing,
Right.
where you're tracing the edges of an object without looking at your paper. Have you ever tried that?
I have, and it is so much harder than it sounds. You
Nice.
really have to slow down and like connect with the contours of what you're drawing.
Right.
Not just with your eyes, but like with your whole hand.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's an incredible exercise in hand-eye coordination, but it's also like about so much more than that, you know? It's
Yeah.
about truly feeling those like transitions between spaces, between the object and the air around it.
Right. And that makes me think of another concept she digs into, this negative space. I love this one. Focusing on the space around an object
Yeah.
rather than the object itself.
It's like flipping your perspective inside out.
Totally.
Right. So instead of drawing of the vase, you're drawing the air that surrounds it,
Yes.
the shape that vase is, like creating within that emptiness.
And in doing so, you start to see the relationship
Yes.
between the object and like its surroundings
Yeah.
in a totally different way.
Exactly.
It's like realizing that the space around something is like just as important as the thing itself.
And that awareness of relationships, of how things connect to one another,
Yeah.
that is so crucial for artists.
Totally.
It's what allows you to create a sense of depth and composition on a flat surface.
It's like you're not just drawing an apple anymore.
Right.
You're drawing the way the light plays on the apple, the way it sits on the table, the way the air feels around the apple. It's like this whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And speaking of light, that's another key element that Simons emphasizes. Like the way light and shadow, they shape how we perceive form and texture.
Light and shadow are like the building blocks of drawing, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can't create the illusion of 3 dimensions if you don't understand how light interacts with form.
Absolutely. And Simons even suggests creating a whole vocabulary for describing different qualities of light: harsh, diffused, soft, warm, cool.
Wow.
It's about training your eye to see the nuances, those subtle shifts in tone and temperature.
Okay, and she's got these really interesting exercises for like developing that sensitivity to light.
Right.
And I was really intrigued by the one using like ink and bleach.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, it's a fascinating technique. So you start by making marks on paper with like black ink,
Okay.
and then you introduce diluted bleach. And as the bleach reacts with the ink,
Yeah.
it lifts some of the pigment,
Huh.
and it creates these incredible gradations of gray, these like subtle washes of tone.
Wow. So you're essentially painting with like light and dark, just watching these forms emerge from the contrast.
Precisely.
That's so cool.
And this kind of leads into another technique that Simons calls push-pull drawing.
Okay.
So instead of like directly observing light and shadow,
Yeah.
you're thinking about how to convey volume through pressure.
Oh, interesting.
You press harder in areas that recede
Yeah.
and lighter in areas that project, almost like you're sculpting with your pencil or charcoal.
So it's like you're sculpting on the paper,
Yeah.
just using pressure and like line weight
Yeah.
to create the illusion of 3 dimensions.
Exactly.
And then there's the exercise where she talks about building a ladder of light, right?
Yeah.
What's that all about?
The ladder of light is all about training your eye to see subtle differences in tone,
Okay.
which is, absolutely crucial for any artist working with light and shadow.
Right.
So you create this scale
Okay.
from darkest to lightest using whatever medium you want, paints, pencils, charcoal, even ink.
Yeah, she mentions using all different techniques like stippling, hatching, cross-hatching to get those tonal variations with ink.
Exactly.
It sounds very detail-oriented.
It is. But that attention to detail, it unlocks an understanding of how artists use light to bring their subjects to life. It's about seeing the world as like a series of tonal relationships,
Yeah.
a tapestry of light and shadow.
And isn't that what makes like a drawing feel so alive?
Yes.
It's not just the outline, it's the way the light plays across the surface, creating that illusion of form and depth.
Precisely. And speaking of like seeing the essence of things, Simons then goes into this concept of gestalt,
Oh, yeah.
this idea of capturing the overall feeling or impression of something rather than getting bogged down in all the like tiny details.
So Gestalt is about seeing the whole, right?
Yes.
Like seeing the forest instead of just the individual trees.
Exactly. It's about capturing the essence, the energy, the feeling of a subject.
I like that.
And to explore this, Simons turns to a surprisingly playful medium, finger painting.
Finger painting, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
No brushes, no pencils, just your hands and the paint.
It's incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
Simons encourages these like quick, intuitive finger painting sessions, often of poses. You're not aiming for accuracy here. You're trying to like channel the energy of the movement you're observing, you know?
Right.
The feeling it evokes in you.
So it's about going beyond just like replicating what you see.
Right.
And instead trying to capture like the feeling, the spirit.
Yes.
I love that. It's like you're dancing with the subject, not just like, observing it from a distance.
Exactly. And that sense of playfulness, like allowing yourself to experiment and explore,
Yeah.
that is so important for artists.
It's where the creativity comes from.
Exactly.
And speaking of finding creativity in unexpected places, Simons then talks about befriending the familiar. This idea of like finding inspiration in these everyday objects, everyday experiences.
She references the Zen practice of painting the 10,000 things.
Right.
This idea that everything in the universe is worthy of our attention, you know?
Yeah.
Even the most like mundane, ordinary objects.
Like that saying, stop and smell the roses.
Yes.
But in this case, it's like stop and really look at the roses.
Exactly.
Like see them as if for the first time.
She even suggests an exercise where you choose a simple plant and you observe it closely throughout its entire life cycle.
Wow.
From sprout to wilt.
Okay. It makes you think about how much we just like go through life, like not really appreciating what's around us.
Yeah.
We think we've seen it all, but like, have we really seen it?
And that brings us to Simon's final point, which I think it's really quite profound.
Okay.
She says it takes two to create anything, the observer and the observed.
Oh, interesting.
They're kind of like linked, you know?
They're almost like dance partners in a way.
Exactly.
Influencing each
They're
other.
both pushing each other to new heights.
Yeah.
Exactly. So as you practice these techniques, as you're cultivating this wild site, like pay attention to what's coming from you. You know, how does your unique perspective, your experiences, your way of seeing the world, how is that influencing your art? It's not just about seeing the world differently. It's about recognizing that you are a part of that world, you know, like you're part of this creative dance.
That's such a powerful way to think about it. It's not just about like technical skill. It's not about learning to draw a straight line.
Right.
It's about like tapping into something way deeper. This connection between like your inner world and the world that's out there.
Precisely. And that's where true creativity comes from, you know, that interplay between observation, expression, the seen, the unseen. Simon's work is really reminding us that we are all capable of cultivating this wild side.
Yeah.
We can all see the world with fresh eyes and, you know, find ways to express our unique vision. It's a journey of self-discovery as much as it is a journey of like, you know, artistic exploration.
It really is.
Yeah.
So as you're like, diving into Simon's exercises and really trying these techniques, just remember it's about so much more than, learning a new skill.
Right.
It's about really opening yourself up to new possibilities,
Yes.
to a deeper understanding of the world, but also that like creative potential that's within you.
Who knew that a workbook called Empty Canvas, Empty Mind could be so like profound?
I know, right? It's like this beautiful paradox. Like by emptying ourselves of all these preconceived notions, by coming to the world with this sense of curiosity and this willingness to really see things anew.
Yeah.
Like we create this space for something truly unique to emerge.
Yes, exactly.
Something meaningful,
Right.
a journey worth taking. And I got to say, based on everything you've shared, like I think you're ready to take that first step.
I think so too.
Yeah.